Good afternoon. Welcome to the CVP Speaker Series at GW. Today's event, Women in Engineering, Charting the Path to Leadership. My name is Lisa Brown. I am Vice President of Operations at CVP, also known as Customer Value Partners. I'd like to take just a second to tell you a little bit more about CVP. We are an award-winning next-gen technology consulting company that helps organizations navigate disruption and prepare for a culture of continuous change. We solve critical business problems for healthcare, national security, and public sector clients by leveraging technologies and industry expertise in technology modernization, health, data science and engineering, business transformation, and a real specialty of ours is cybersecurity. So that's a little bit about CVP. Now let's talk about the speaker series itself. So for those of you that are new to the speaker series, CVP partnered with the George Washington University to create an ongoing speaker series focused on some really exciting topics: change, technology, innovation, entrepreneurship. This is the 5th event in the series, and normally we absolutely are in person. Due to COVID-19, this is our first virtual event, so thank you for joining us on our maiden voyage here. And you can find out more about the speaker series and upcoming events at our website, cvpcorp.com. So we are tremendously excited about today. Again, our topic is Women in Engineering, Charting the Path to Leadership. We've got an illustrious group of panelists that I'm going to be introducing you to in just a few minutes. They're going to be sharing with us their journey, their lessons learned as they progressed in their career. But first, let's just touch on a couple of housekeeping items. So the first one, this event is being recorded, and this recording can be found at the CVP website post the conclusion of the event. The second thing, look out in your email box after the event. Everyone who registered will receive an email with a link to the recording as well as an attachment. And that attachment is a tip sheet. We're going to be capturing all the great tips that we learned today in one document and sending that out to you. So be sure to check out your email inbox for that. And then last but not least, if you have a question, you've got a box at the bottom of your screen there that says Q&A. Feel free to go ahead and type in any question that you may have throughout the course of the event. Everyone's muted, so from that perspective, we won't be able to take live questions, but we will field as many online questions as that are submitted, so we'll see how many we get to. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists. So panelists, just to set your expectations, I'm going to state your name, your title, and then if you could tell us a little bit more about your current role. So first, we have Andrea Norris, Director, Center of Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at National Institute of Health. Andrea.
Yes, hi. I am the CIO at the National Institutes of Health, which is located in Bethesda, Maryland. We are part of the Department of Health and Human Services, and we are the largest funder of biomedical research in the world. We are a collection of 27 institutes and centers that are focused on advancing research and discovery to improve the health and reduce disease for folks all around the world. And so in addition to being the CIO, I also run one of the institutes and centers, the Center for Information Technology, and we deliver a large distributed 100 gigabit network to 110 labs and research facilities, a supercomputer, and all kinds of other technologies that are in place to support the very important work of our researchers around the country.
Fantastic, thank you. Maria Roat, Deputy Federal Chief Information Officer, Office of Management and Budget, Office of the Chief Information Officer.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you. Maria Roat, again, the Deputy Federal Chief Information Officer. I started in this job about 3 months ago, coming up on 4. And really, in my role, I drive technology and where technology is going for the federal government. And this is through policy, through all of those things you see to really make and set the stage and enable CIOs like Andrea to get their job done and make sure they've got the policies, the regulations, the tools in their toolbox to get their work done. So from a federal level, really looking at the entire federal government's footprint around technology and really making sure that we're advancing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maria. Professor Shelly Heller, Ph.D., Director, Center for Women in Engineering, School of Engineering and Applied Science at GW.
Good morning. First, before I say a bit about myself, I wanted to thank CVP for taking the leadership in a leadership panel on the webinar series. And I also wanted to expressly thank you for allowing the Center for Women in Engineering at GW to participate. That said, I am actually an emeritus professor now and director of the Center for Women in Engineering at GW. I also have another hat, which is a research professor, under which I continue to do research about recruiting and retaining women in engineering and STEM in general.
Fantastic, thank you. And then last but not least, we have Sonja Lemott, Chief PEO Engineering Division. PEO stands for Program Executive Office for Defense Healthcare Management Systems. Sonja.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Just as Shelly stated, I'd like to thank everyone for inviting us and having these series. I think is extremely important, especially for women engineers or those that are in the field of STEM. As Lisa stated, I am the chief engineer at PEO DHMS. Here we transform healthcare delivery for both our military, veterans, and their families as well. A lot of what we do is we transform a lot of our legacy systems that we currently have for medical and drive that to an electronic health record to where everyone, including all clinicians, military folks, can actually go into one system, pull their records, and actually identify all of the healthcare from cradle to grave, something we've never been able to do, but right now we're at the breaking point of actually doing that. So I'm glad to be here and looking forward to the conversation today.
Fantastic, that's exciting stuff. Okay, well, now that we've gotten through introductions, let's go ahead and get started. This first question is for all panelists, and I'll call on you one at a time. So here's the question. Please tell us about your personal path to STEM leadership and what was unique about your particular journey. So Andrea, let's start with you.
Thank you. So my undergraduate degree was actually in economics. And so when I graduated from the College of William and Mary in the early 80s, most of my friends moved to Washington. I decided I wanted to move to the Washington, D.C. area. So I packed up my beat up old little joyful red Mazda, $300, put all my belongings in the car, and to find, the job. I knew Washington was waiting for me, to take on the world. I interviewed, and I finally found a job at something called the Grace Commission, which was a presidential White House commission to look at, they brought in volunteers from the Fortune 100 companies to look at how to apply private sector business practices to improve the business practices of the federal government. They looked at all the different agencies. They stayed away from policy, but to see how they could improve business practices. They asked me, what could I do? I said, I'm great at analysis and data analysis and math, but I'd been a receptionist as a summer job. They said, we'll let you be a receptionist. This was in the early 80s. And at that time, less than a third of women were in the workforce. And so I was a pretty bad receptionist, but they pretty quickly realized I was a pretty good analyst. And I was able to set up a nice database for all the recommendations. But what was great about that job was it exposed me to all of the different agencies because they were going in and learning and studying different programs. It also exposed me to a lot of different companies. And I was able to decide this was really this kind of strategy analysis really was something that I found very intriguing. And so when that wrapped up, I went to work at a consulting firm, Booz Allen and Hamilton at the time. This was the beginning of the technology era. PCs and Macs were just starting, mini computers, and I worked in the practice that was doing strategy and technology management. I worked there, went to school at night at GW, got my MBA in information systems and technology, so for which I'm forever appreciative of. That was a burgeoning field, right? This was changing the way the world was working. It was at its infancy. And so I loved doing that, really learning how to apply technology to affect the way organizations worked in powerful ways. And one of my clients was actually NASA. And that was in the decade of the 90s when it was such an exciting time. We were launching the space shuttle every month. We were building the International Space Station. It was the beginning of the Mars Landers program. And so they asked me to come and work with them. And that's when I switched to work for the federal government. And it could not have been a more exciting time. I still bleed NASA blood, right? It was an engineering organization that also did science. And it was just a fascinating time to be there with the discovery and power of what our country was doing. But I decided to leave there and go to the National Science Foundation, which was also very science oriented, but across all disciplines. I wanted to get a little more hands-on operational activity and experience with technology. And I stayed there for a long time. That gave me the opportunity to travel to the United States Antarctic program, to South Pole twice, to look at that technology marvel, right? Because we were responsible for running that program. And so again, little did I know that's what NSF was responsible for. But I will tell you the engineering and power that is in that place and the science that is literally done at the bottom of the world is amazing. And then after that, I went to the National Institutes of Health because it was time for me to move on to a larger and something in medicine and health and science. And so my career has always been in technology, but always in the STEM space, always in the science and technology and engineering. And it has allowed me, and the thing I'm going to promote today is consider a job, a career path in the federal government. The opportunities are amazing. The scale and scope and things that you can do either directly as a federal employee or indirectly in companies that do such support for the federal programs and government, because you will have a fascinating career in STEM, and we need talented people to help in these very exciting programs.
Great, thank you. What a journey and some great advice there. Maria, let's go to you next. Can you talk about your personal path to STEM leadership?
Oh, wow. So I actually started my journey. I've been in tech, in IT before it was called IT. I'll go back to high school. I was always really good at math, and a really good math student. So for those of you that are on the line that are really young, they used to teach things like home ec and stuff like that in high school. And I'm talking in the 70s. And I took none of that. I vectored to the business and all the math courses I could take. And from there, while I was in high school, I discovered this thing called a computer. And, you know, for anybody who's been to the vocational programs they offer at high schools, by coincidence, mine had this thing called computer programming. And I thought, well, that looks kind of cool. So as a junior and senior in high school, I went to this vocational school, you know, with everybody else who was doing car mechanics and cosmetology and stuff. I was doing this computer thing and I really liked it. And And I ended up, as I was looking at colleges, understanding that colleges at the time were really teaching just programming. I'm talking, you know, Fortran and very core basic, a lot of the assembler, all of that. And what I found was that the Navy was actually doing operational stuff with computers. So I ended up joining the Navy in 1981 because of the computers and wanting to join and to be able to operationalize. So I did that. And that was an incredible experience. And when I got off active duty, I stayed in the reserves, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But I got a job as a civil servant, as a GS3. And again, I continued working in operations. So throughout my career, I moved from mainframes to PCs. I've done networking. I've climbed in ceilings, pulling cables. I've done assessments of entire buildings. I've done engineering. The early days of Cisco's and routers. I was setting up global networks. So from an engineering perspective, so all the way through my career, I have touched technology and done many things. So moving out of, you know, not just networking and PCs, but to global networks and being able to run enterprise global networks. So I've worked for the Navy, I've worked for DHS, I've worked on some really incredible and amazing programs, all in tech. So I've got a lot of hands-on in my background. But even as I was progressing in my career, started taking on some bigger roles, you know, working in different areas, whether it was DHS or some of the others, I continue to move on and grow in my career. And as I said earlier, I stayed in the reserves with the Navy. And what that really afforded me is, while I was growing my career, starting as a GS3 and then a 5 and a 7 and 9 and all the way up through an SES, I also had a Navy career where I continued in technology, but with the Navy and in the intelligence world. And what the military gives you that you don't always get, and we're talking about this today, is some of those leadership opportunities. If you're ever in the military, you're always in charge of something. If you're out of boot camp, you're senior to somebody who is in boot camp, and you're going to get put in charge of, you know, even if it's, you know, swabbing the decks or field daying a space. And as you progress through your career, you're being put in charge of more things, and there's always leadership development in the military. So even I really had two parallel careers. One was in the military as well as my civilian career. And those allowed me to really grow and move into different positions, because the leadership development I got in the military applied to my civilian career, and I was able to apply all of those things. And as I moved through my civilian career, you know, the full-time job, being a program manager to director of operations to a lot of different roles, to being the chief technology officer of the Department of Transportation. How cool is that? That is an amazing job. Andrea talked about the mission, and I've always been in the mission because there are so many things you can do in the federal government that you will never do otherwise. And I'll say that because I got to work on the TSA Secure Flight Program and stand that up. That is the program that checks your date of birth and name before you get on a plane. And I worked on that, and I know what the minimum data elements are that were required for that program. I worked on that. Who gets to do that? That is so cool. So that's why I've stayed with the federal government. You know, I've progressed through my career, and, you know, I retired from the military as a Master Chief, still in the, you know, with the technology community, and I'm still in it today after 40 years.
Well, thank you for your service, and what an incredible journey. That is really fantastic, and I'm glad you shared it with everyone. Let's move on to Sonja. Sonja, you're next.
Thank you again. You know, I'd like to reiterate a lot of what the ladies have already stated in terms of always being in engineering and everything that we've done. Like Maria, I would say my career started in high school. I went to a school that actually offered majors. for us to major in and then progress to kind of give us that college experience of selecting classes. And while I was there, I actually majored in aerospace engineering and actually had a minor in business administration. So once graduating high school, went on to college. I graduated from the Naval Academy and actually studied aerospace engineering. So that was a feat in itself. Being at the academy, everything is STEM related. You can have a degree in engineering, but you will still graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree. It was a fantastic opportunity. Once leaving the academy, I was commissioned an officer in the Marine Corps and became an air traffic control officer. So again, staying within the STEM field, dealing with aircraft, controlling, leading Marines was phenomenal. The best experience anyone could ever ask for. A lot of people say, well, that's hardcore. Well, yeah, anything is hardcore, but it was a fabulous experience, absolutely. After the Marine Corps, decided to go into the civilian sector. You'll probably notice I have a range of experiences. Went into pharmaceutical sales. Again, we're still in the STEM field, the pharmaceutical science field. Great experience. Led our team there to several awards for, I think I was there for about three to 4 years. Awesome experience, learning different aspects of the pharmaceutical community, the health community, and so forth. Once I had my fill of pharmaceuticals, I still stayed with the civilian side of the house and went into manufacturing. Went to a company called Modtech where we actually built modular buildings. That was really fascinating, especially working on the architecture aspect when it comes to being able to withstand hurricanes, storms, as well as earthquakes, because we were stationed, well, we were located out in California, so that was pretty much the number one topic to ensure that any modular buildings that we built could at least withstand earthquakes. After leaving Modtech, actually went into the federal government. That particular time, I went into Nav Air and worked with their metrology calibration. Fascinating to deal with aircraft as well as ships in terms of their calibration program, their statistical analysis in terms of all of the equipment that they have to ensure that the equipment that calibrates certain brakes on aircraft, you're actually responsible to ensure that that equipment is working correctly to ensure the calibration is done correctly. So that's unique in itself in terms of ensuring that you have a double check. Once leaving the Nav Air side, decided to go back to my roots of the Marine Corps and went to Marine Corps Systems Command. There had opportunity to build a lot of the weapon systems that I used at that time was quite ancient on the Marine Corps side of the house. So that was fascinating in terms of dealing with the same people that we worked with. Again, building aircraft, excuse me, not aircraft, but weapon systems to ensure that our country stays safe and that that Marine on the ground had the tools and the elements required to fight the fight and the next battle. After leaving the Marine Corps, actually came to the position I'm in now with Defense Health Agency. Here, you know, it's funny, you know, leaving the Marine Corps and building weapon systems, it was all about kill, kill, kill. Now on the Defense Health Agency side, it's all about how many lives can we save? It's all about saving lives. So it's a nice little oxymoron, but it's all about applying those engineering principles that we learned from day one, applying it, moving forward, and ensuring that there's the best healthcare for our active duty, our veterans, and their family. We're doing a lot of exciting things at this point in time. We have the electronic health record system that's out there, combining all of the healthcare records. Maria, you may have realized or remember that whenever you picked up from a duty station, you had to go pick up your medical records and dental records and haul it off with you. Now we're getting to the point where it's all in one system. We're not there yet. We're just starting to deploy, but we're on our way. Not only that, but we're incorporating the VA. So we'll have that cradle to grave care. So when you start off on the active duty side and end up on the VA side, it's all still in one system. So these are some exciting things that we're starting to do. We're bringing in the Coast Guard, and our intent is hopefully to have a federated system here in the future. But when it comes to leadership and being a leader in STEM, I would like to say, I think it's always innate for everyone to be a leader. It's just when you recognize the leader in you, because everything you've done in terms of leading by example, making sure you stay technically proficient, and making sure you take the core classes, the trainings, and things moving forward, those are leader attributes that you would need to have as you move forward. So I think it's not a point in terms of when you became a leader, it's when you recognize that you already are that leader.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you for your service as well. What an incredibly impressive STEM journey. And you're right, all of those different jobs as you went along your path, they all had STEM at the forefront, yet you did a lot of different things. So thank you. Shelly, your personal path to STEM leadership, please.
So first of all, I so enjoy listening to other women talk about their careers, because we're all very different. And yet you start to see themes that come together, experiences that we've all had in one way or another. So thank you, ladies, very much. I must say I didn't get gray from nothing. My step on the path to where I am now started before the Civil Rights Movement as a brand new BS student in chemistry. I drove to Washington with a brand new husband, who is still my husband, and had to go to work because he was a graduate student making $2,000 for the year. And it was my job to support the family. I took my chemistry degree and went to the FBI, and they didn't call it IT and they didn't call it HR. I went to the personnel office and had a great tour with a gentleman. At the end, he said, "Did I see any place that would, I'd like to work?" And I said, "I'd like to work in," they didn't call it forensics then, they called it physical chemistry. Said, "I'd like to work in the physical chemistry lab." He said, "We don't hire women as chemists, we hire women as secretaries." And home I went. It was on a Thursday. I cried, very proud of myself, I cried. And the next day, went out to an employment agency and said, "I need a job." They said, "What can you do?" I said, "I'm a chemist." And they said, "Anything else?" And I said, "Oh, I worked on the 1620 for 2 years while I was an undergraduate in our computer center. And by Friday afternoon, I had a job as with the Planning Research Corporation, actually, and never looked back. I spent what my kids like to call mom's degree a decade. I did a bachelor's degree in the early 60s, a master's in the 70s, and finished my Ph.D. in the 80s. And I will just close this. I so appreciate all of our federal related jobs, but I'm going to put in a plug for academia. And academia provides a different kind of leadership. In academia, for the most part, you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you look in that mirror and you say, "This is what we should do today." And then you turn around and do it. And so that is another pathway for leadership, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Shelly. So now let's look at things a little bit from the opposite side. All four of you have had amazing careers and have reached the pinnacle of STEM leadership. So Maria, this one's going to come to you. Why are there still so few women in STEM leadership despite the high rates of women with STEM degrees? And why, in many cases, do they leave?
You know, I don't know that anybody's got a good answer for that. You know, I've read about it, as has everybody else, and I have stuck with it. Right? I know that I have stuck with because I love what I do and I like technology and I'm curious by nature and I'm always asking questions. Anybody who's here on the panel probably can echo that, right? You want to learn and you stick with it. And I know it's hard. And you know, we've talked about hurdles and things like that. You know, being in the Navy, my experience has been everybody pulls their weight and everybody has a job to do, and you weren't really treated any differently whether you were male or female or what have you. It was, but having, you know, why are there so few men? There's more women now than certainly when I started and when some of you started back in the early days of your careers. And why do women leave? And I've thought about that. You know, I've had a career. I was on the path. It took me, I will be honest, I didn't get my bachelor's degree till 2014. I was on the 25-year plan. I stuck with it, but and you know, just being tenacious with it and continuing to stick with it. I've had a family, I've had 3 kids. Are there times in my career where I put things on pause because of my kids? Oh, definitely, right? I was a GS 14 and a GS 13 for a long time, you know, because I had 3 kids to raise. I put things on pause, but I stayed with my job because I really loved what I did and where I was working. And, you know, I don't know that there's a good answer why women leave the field or why there's so few, because so many women are getting degrees and that are so talented that you know, being able to stick with it and wanting to work in the field, and it's really hard to wrap your head around why people leave and that they just don't go into the field. It's not easy. I'm not going to say anything is easy. I'm sure we've all experienced that. This is not hard. But if you like what you do, hard doesn't matter. And you're going to continue on and keep working with it. And, you know, your question about, you know, any hurdles women face in engineering, frankly, I think I was always wired a little bit differently because I never thought I was different than the men, right? Being in the Navy, you have a job to do. I went in the civil service, you know, I had a job to do and I did my job and I worked alongside, you know, women, you know, and men, and it didn't matter who you were, how old you were. I work with older folks, I work with younger folks, I work with all, and it didn't matter. And it really took a while before that aha moment came in, and you know, the recognition that not everybody has those same experiences, you know, and I know that's something that I've had to learn along the way, is to understand that other women don't have those same experiences, because I think a little bit, I don't know if I think differently or it's because I grew up in the Navy where it just didn't matter if you were tall, short, green, yellow, blue, male, female, what have you. It just didn't matter and everybody pulled their weight. So I don't know that there's really a good answer why there's, you know, so many women who may not stick with it, or maybe they leave and come back. I don't know that there's a really, really good answer to that.
So to tag on to what you were just talking about, Maria, Sonja, are there some attributes that you think women have that are really successful going down this path? And if you had to think about those attributes, what are some things that come to mind?
Absolutely. When I think about the attributes for women in leadership, they really wouldn't be any different when you're thinking about men themselves. But if I had to hone in on a few that probably relate more so to women, the first one would be confidence. Knowing who you are, know your strengths, your weaknesses, as well as probably having clear goals and an action plan to get there. It's all about body language. It's about how you carry yourself. It's about how you speak. So the first one definitely would be confidence. Next, I would probably think about claiming credit or claim your credit for your ideas or that you deserve. Sometimes as women, we have a tendency to take a step back or be in the background and not speak up for ourselves. And sometimes you get overlooked. I would say women who are successful in STEM, they're the ones that actually speak up, especially if they're overlooked. Prime example, sometimes we can be in a meeting, you can throw out an idea, it's not heard, but someone else can throw out the exact same idea, but it's heard. An example of speaking up and coming in for that specific example is, looking at that person, oh, thank you for identifying the same, idea that I had earlier, and re-engage the conversation and go, by the way, here are some additional things to go along with that, yada, yada, yada. I mean, with that, you're reclaiming your idea and the credit that you deserve, as well as continuing to move that conversation forward. I would say another attribute would probably be yourself. A lot of times we come in and we have this ideal of what that person should be, how they should act, what their leadership style should be. No, be you, figure out what your leadership style and lead accordingly. That's the worst thing you could do, is going to be someone else, because now you have no idea who you are. And then I would say probably the last attribute, and I would think that everyone on this panel would agree with me, network. Identifying who your mentors are, meeting different people of different demographics, backgrounds, different professions, getting your name out there, identifying who's who. A lot of times it's about building those relationships, because those are some of the people that are going to propel you into the next positions as well as the power positions. So those would be some of the attributes I would absolutely look at.
Fantastic. One should never be shy, right? Build your brand.
Absolutely.
Andrea, I'm going to come back to you. So when you think about the team that you manage, how do you ensure gender inclusion?
Yeah, so we've done a lot for diversity, gender in all backgrounds, in very proactive ways, especially in my over the years I've been at NIH. And some things that we do, so we very purposefully establish search committees with diverse people as members on the search committees. That's very important. And we established an office that will go out. So a lot of the positions that we're recruiting for are scientists and researchers and people with engineering and STEM backgrounds, nationally known, or people in the national research ecosystem at the universities. And so we cull and develop resources of people of diverse backgrounds, women, people of different, from different areas of the country, different race or ethnic backgrounds, and provide those resources to our search committees to do personal outreach to people. And it's amazing that the impact that has. I've had many conversations with people who say, wow, I can't believe you're reaching out to me. I wouldn't have thought that I would be someone you would consider. And it's like, please consider this position, right? We are really interested in someone of your experience and background. That has made a big difference. We have watched, when I first joined NIH as an institute director, there were only 3 or 4 women institute directors out of 27. We now have 10. And in fact, there's a Patty Brennan, who's the director of the National Library of Medicine, did a beautiful blog that's on the National Library of Medicine site called The Power of 10, right? Which was each woman director talking about her experience and perspectives and what it meant to be a woman director there. Another thing that makes a difference, to use your voice to bring others in, and to attract and recruit others and to provide that kind of influence. So there's a variety of things we do. We open up the recruitment channels. We make it clear from day one. We have diverse search panels. But I also think there's things that we have to institutionalize. We have to be really careful about. You know, they talk about the glass ceiling, but also, you know, there's a sticky floor issue of things that hold women back as they progress in their career. These are, you know, policies and approaches that don't provide enough flexibility for people with families and time and, you know, respect the kind of norms and behaviors, the informal, you know, that go on in organizations, especially as you go higher and higher up in leadership. You know, there's only, you know, the numbers of women in the C-suites are abysmal, still less than 20–30% across our country. The other is this thing called a broken rung in the promotions. So we've demonstrated over and over again, the pipeline is there with graduates out of college, women, you know, 50% and greater across all of these disciplines. But then you get into organizations and that stage from entry to that first manager level, you know, it's not quite the same. It's like 80 to 85% women, 100% as opposed to 100% male. So 15–20% difference. Now your pool for going to that senior manager is smaller, and that carries forward year after year throughout your career. And so there's some institutional things that we really do have to look at in these policies, you know, within organizations, in private sector companies, in tenure in academia, and how to best support, especially in throughout the earlier years of one's career, where women are having more likely to be having children and young families, and in other ways. And so I think ways to go. I have kids, a son and a daughter-in-law that are, you know, fairly early in their careers. I honestly had hoped by now that we were further along, and I am disappointed we're not. To be frank, I think we've made some progress, but I think there is so much more to do. And I worry. There's a report I just read last night. I would encourage. It's called Women in Workplace 2020. It's by McKinsey and Company and the Lean Inward. It's particularly talking about the impact of the coronavirus pandemic and the impact on women in the workplace who are feeling this disproportionately because of the responsibilities of having to deal with your children and, you know, no schools and the pressures at work, and particularly women of color and at all levels and all fields. And I saw yesterday that the statistics for job loss is for this last month is so disproportionate for women leaving the workforce versus men, largely because of the coronavirus. For the first time, they're talking about a women workforce recession. And so these are important things that we as a society have to start to pay attention to much more seriously. With the way we, with our workforce policies, everything from recruitment to sustaining a healthy workplace for all people, but especially for women who often carry a different burden of responsibility with different sets of expectations and norms.
Really, really good points, and timely as well. So let me ask all of you, and I'm gonna start with Shelly. Just based on everything we've talked about, your experience, everything you've seen over the years, if you had one top tip to give women that are thinking about going down the STEM path and the STEM leadership path, what would that one tip be? And Shelly, I'd love to start with you.
Well, I think my one top tip would be do it. Right? It's a sort of Nike thing. Just do it. I fall into that trap, as many women do, by reducing their point of view by saying, I think. I know. that I have heard great advice from these other women on the panel. And it really comes back down to do it. If it's something you want to pursue, do it. And you have a network that can bring you forward. I will leave you with one corollary advice on the do it. And I learned this from two Maureen Dowd, and I can't think of the other female columnist right now, but that columnist, Andrea Quinn, left the New York Times, and Maureen Dowd took her office. And Anna Quinlan said, you just write to me anytime when you have a frustration. And so Maureen Dowd would write, "Dear Anna, blah, da, 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 da." And Anna Quinlan would write back. And then it got to be, "Dear Anna, I can't believe he said that." And Anna Quinlan would write back. And it has degenerated to just, "Dear Anna." And that's a way of blowing off steam. So do it and have that support group to give you the confidence and ability to move forward.
Great. Maria, your top tip.
I'm going to say, don't be afraid to take risk, right? Whether it's your career, you know, I've always been in IT, never did the same job twice. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. They talk about women, you know, your list of 10 things and, oh, I'm not qualified because I can't do all 10. I never subscribe to that, right? If I can do one of them, yeah, okay, I'm good, right? So don't be afraid to take risk in your career. And then going along with that, the corollary to that is within your job, don't be afraid to take risk within your job as a leader. Be prudent, be measured, but take risk. And Andrea knows this. I always told my folks, as long as I don't look, you know, I told them I don't look good in an orange jumpsuit, let's go. And that really, taking that job risks allows you to continue to be innovative, entrepreneurial, and being able to lead teams that are like that. So my advice is about taking risk both in your career and within your job.
Love it. Thank you. Sonja, top tip.
I would say my top tip would be know your craft. You know, they always say knowledge is power in the STEM field. It really, truly is. It's about confidence. It's about knowing who you are, knowing what you know, and know it well. One of the best aspects of knowing your craft is you can absolutely go take a seat at the table. Instead of taking the background seat or being in the background, take a seat at the table. And as Shelly said, do it.
Fantastic. Last but not least, Andrea, top tip.
Follow your passion. I'm a firm believer in passion. You are going to be working for the rest of your life unless you hit the lottery. And that's a lot of years and a lot of hours. And so you really want to be doing something that you believe in and that you enjoy. And unlike, you know, from when I started, you tended to stay a lot longer with organizations. I'm not encouraging people to jump around every year or two. That's not going to serve you very well either. You'll know the right time frame, but there's no harm in moving. In fact, that can very easily make you a far more effective contributor to your organization. Don't be afraid of that either. So know what's a good timetable for you, but always follow your passion. And then you will always enjoy it, and you will likely be extremely successful.
So I've got a question from the audience. And Maria, I'm going to come to you first. Outside of this group, are there any female STEM leaders that come to mind that you just deeply, deeply respect?
Oh man, anybody who's come before me in tech. There are so many women. What was it? Was yesterday Ada Lovelace Day? Yeah.
I think you're right. Yes.
Yeah, yesterday, Ada Lovelace Day, right? So, you know, folks like that who really, really led. I mean, there's so many, and we need to celebrate them, from, you know, even Grace Hopper and her predecessors and everybody else who's worked in any of the STEM fields. I don't know that there's actually one in particular, but there are so many out there. And when you read about some of the work that these women have done, it's
Like Maria
amazing.
may
There's
have.
a lot of them.
Okay, fantastic. Sonja, how about you?
Oh gosh, I really like Maria's answer. You know, anyone that's come before you, but you know, a lot of the greats. Katherine Johnson, who just passed away this year, a pioneer in her own right, especially for African American women. Dr. A. Jameson, again, there's a theme that I'm staying with because, again, aerospace engineering is my automatic background. So these women have been phenomenal. They are trailblazers. Wow. It's a privilege and an honor to actually follow behind them and to continue on with their work. And again, it's one of the things that I absolutely want to ensure that we bring up other women of color, other women of different demographics, understanding what STEM is and keep them in the field. As Maria stated, you know, I too have 4 kids. My husband works, everything. You can have it all. I'm not saying it's easy, but you can have it all and work it out. But I would identify those ladies as people that I absolutely look up to. Yes.
Fantastic. Shelly, how about you? Someone in the STEM field, female, that just really sticks out in your mind?
First, I'd like to take a little bit of difference with Sonja's last comment. I think, yes, you can have it all, just not all at once. But I think there are many fabulous women, but I take most of my leadership from my students because they're the ones that push me on. They're the ones that keep me current. I was once told I was way cool, and I thought that was, I don't know, should I worry now? Should I pull back my way coolness? And they said, no, that's where you want to be today. So I would say that for me, my leaders are my students who are keeping current, who have introduced me to all of the modern themes and push me really to be a better leader.
Andrea, I'm going to throw you a curveball because I'm going to change the question on you. This is also from the audience. And this audience member shared, it's very inspiring to hear the personal stories and tips. I'd be curious if any one of the panelists, and Andrea, this is coming to you, has a personal story of a career-related difficulty and how you overcame it.
Well, so I've had 14 of them this morning. So I'm like, I would be hard pressed to come up with one. Career-related difficulty. You know, I guess as you progress in your career and the higher you go up in these organizations, the more complex the problems are and the difficulties are that you're dealing with. And I think, I don't know that I could come up with a singular one that comes to mind. I think what I have learned is, because I mean, I always tell people, if it crosses my door archway, it's a problem generally. And so it's not, you know, sometimes it's great news. Usually it's a problem. And so a lot of what, you know, leadership roles as you move up in the organization is really, you know, I call it like surveillance. You're kind of surveilling all the things to see kind of where there might be something bubbling up that might become a problem, is something that could lead to something very positive, needs to be nurtured, needs some attention, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are the kinds of things that I spend a lot of time on, is just kind of surveilling, working relationships, you know, working the landscape, kind of surveillance, and teeing things up, for things that need to be teed up for future discussions, and trying to advocate for support, or things of that nature. A lot of time is spent there. So a career, a career decision, it's always hard to know. I talked about moving around. It's always know when the right time is. I always start to kind of feel the symptoms, a couple of years before I get up, before I actually make big moves. That's me. Some people kind of, have their own ways of doing it. But I have been so fortunate in my career to work for amazing organizations and with some of the most brilliant people in the world. And that is why I love working with the science and engineering agencies, because they are all about innovation and discovery, and conquering frontiers, and it's a different way of thinking, and they're where they focus their time and energy and talents is quite different, and so I haven't had really a bad career or difficult career issue. My career journey has been pretty seamless.
Appreciate
very
that.
positive.
Fantastic. All right, Sonja, you said you have, I'm sorry, did you want to add something?
Can I interrupt you, Lisa?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm going to speak for all those women who've been told by other people, for example, if you were a real engineer, you'd understand this, or other wonderful remarks like that. And it's out there. Difficult conversations are out there, and they don't call them difficult for no reason. They are difficult. And sometimes you really want to come back with that perfect response, slap, and be done with it. And so I would like to say, take that advice, measure twice, cut once. Say it in your brain, write it to Dear Anna, think about it. Don't hit send until you let that email cool, because difficult conversations can escalate in ways that you don't want them to. And I know from many years of personal experience, you want to say something, you're so clever that you would cut them to pieces. And unfortunately, that does not move you forward. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but this one hit way too close to home to let go.
Glad you did. Appreciate that. So Sonja, we only have about a minute or two left, so keep that in mind in terms of your response.
Okay.
But you've got 4 kids. One of our participants out there has an 11-year-old daughter who is following in her mom's footsteps of, as she says, being a nerd tech. What would you tell that 11-year-old? What advice would you have? And we've got about 2 minutes.
Oh, gosh. Continue being that nerd tech. It's exciting. Andrea stated before, follow your passion. If this is something you want to do it. Enjoy it. Have fun. It's about discovery. It's about creating and developing new things. I'm sure you've heard from all the ladies on the panel, this is passionate for us. This is something we wake up and we itch and we want to do it again. I would say, oh gosh, follow your dreams. Join as many clubs. Be the nerd. It's all right to be a nerd. We've all been there. I will continue to be the nerd. I tell my kids, you know what? Sometimes it's a good thing to be the nerd, because I have 1 girl and 3 boys. I tell my boys, I said, the nerds get all the good girls later on. So don't worry about it. It'll all work itself out. But join as many STEM clubs as possible. And mom, let her interact with you. Tell her any and everything there is about STEM. Tell her how exciting it is. Keep that passion driving in her, and she'll probably grow up and do great things.
Fantastic. What a great note to end us on. So I want to thank all the participants out there. We had over 100 folks today as part of our event. I obviously want to thank the panelists, our host, GW. We will be sending out the link in the tip sheet to all of you. So look for that in your inbox and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you again.